What's going on, guys? So we are out here at my Coachman Brookstone, and we are about to undertake a very interesting upgrade, and one that's not going to be too unique to my channel because I did it on our previous fifth wheel. But I'm going to be doing it with a new product this time, and it's definitely one I think some people might have some interest in viewing. So hang tight, I'll be right back. All right, so you see we have the LCI Solid Step XF steps. These are the prototype steps that LCI included for our fifth wheel when it was being manufactured. These steps are wider than the traditional LCI step. They are a little bit lighter and they are removable. So there's some pins at the top. I made a video talking about how difficult it can be to actually remove them if you want to. They just aren't that easy. And why would you want to remove them? Well, because you may be in a situation where your RV is in storage. Now, right now, I actually rent out two spots side by side. So I have the luxury of parking mine right in the middle, putting my slides out and still having space on each side. But if I only had one slip here like I used to, or if I have my cargo trailer next to my RV, then my RV will be too close to the unit next to mine for me to safely deploy my steps. What do I mean by that? Well, these steps swing out and away and down, which means if I swing these up, that foot, or even the bottom corner right here, is going to swing out slightly like this, probably about a foot further than you currently see it, which means if I only have 3 feet of space between my RV and my neighbor, I'm not going to have any way to deploy those steps without pulling the fifth wheel out, dropping the steps out, doing whatever I need to do, then putting it back, because it just doesn't have the swing out I need, the room. And you can actually see that on a lot of units that come with these steps. This is a challenge a lot of folks have if they keep their RV in storage. So on our Chaparral that we had, I replaced the Moride step above steps with the GlowStep Revolution, specifically because those steps accordion out and you can set them up almost straight down. You can pull them all the way out and have them swing like these and you would make contact, but the nice thing is you don't have to do that. You can basically make it a ladder going to the ground right here. So I am going to swap these steps out because I'm not always going to have my fifth wheel set up like this. And again, one of the challenges and one of the reasons why I got two spots is if I need to access my fifth wheel all the way around, then I can park it in the middle like I've done here. But we're not just going to install the same GlowStep Revolutions that we had on the Chaparral. We're actually going to a new version of them that they provided for review and evaluation on the channel so you can see what they're all about. And guys, for those of you who will comment and say, man, JD gets all this free stuff, it's just sent to him. First of all, it's not free. If you have to create a video, if there's an expectation that you're going to talk about it and you're going to be out here in this heat, you're going to install it, you're going to review it, and you're going to showcase it, that's kind of what they're looking for. They want the marketing aspect, but don't kid yourself. I do not just give out good reviews. If the product does not meet my expectations, I'm going to talk about it, just like the Solid Step here. You know, LCI provided this as part of the build. The challenge is, if I want to remove them and actually use them, I have to muscle them out, carry them to the end, bring them back, and put them back in place, which does not work for me. I'm always going to give my honest evaluation on products. I don't know if I can say that about all YouTube channels out there. I am not an affiliate for any of these products, so I make no money off of this at all. If I get you guys to buy 100 of these because you like seeing them on the channel and they work well for me, I don't get paid a penny for any of that stuff. I am part of the Amazon affiliate program, so if you buy something off of my Amazon links, I do get a small commission off of that, so I appreciate that when you do. And etrailer actually does not pay me for individual products I sell. They are a sponsor of my channel, but it doesn't matter how many of what they sell based off my channel. I don't get paid anything extra for that. So they're just a huge supporter of my channel, and I really couldn't do what I do without them. That being said, we are going to swap these steps out with the new GlowStep Revolution Uprising. The Uprising is the step that actually folds into your RV, kind of like these steps do, these LCI solid steps, as well as the Moride step above, but it's their version of the accordion step. We're going to put those on. They do require a little bit of work, and they have a video which kind of showcases how quick and easy it can be to install them, but that's not going to be for everybody. This should be a pretty interesting install. Let's jump to the product so you can see what it looks like. Okay, so here it is on the tailgate of my truck. Again, this is the Torque Lift Internationals. This is their GlowStep Revolution Uprising, and this is designed for the top flip-up style step as opposed to the undermount step that you might typically see. Now, this can actually be added onto an RV that has the underslung steps. The difference here is that it's really designed for an RV that doesn't have them, even though you can use it either way. And this includes the booster step off the bottom. So even though it's the 4-step system, you have this kind of underslung step underneath the 4th step, which will boost the distance and give you an additional step, which is really cool. Now, before you run out and order the steps, you have to be aware of measurements that need to be taken to make sure it properly fits. You need to measure the width of your door jamb, so from here to here, and provide them with that. You also need to measure the height from here to the ground, and this is going to be based on your RV being level. So you don't want to take that measurement if your RV is not level. So basically those are the two, but then the third one that you need to be very, very aware of is you need the room for their bracket to fit right here. So you're going to open the door, or you can actually close it, bring it right here, and you want to measure from the bottom of the door right here to this piece right here, and that's going to give you your third measurement. So once you've taken those 3 measurements, you can check on their website and you can see if their steps will work with your RV and which specific steps will work with your RV. So that's really important. But the first thing we're going to need to do is remove the steps that are in here. Okay, so this is going to be the interior mounting bracket. Let me show you where this goes. Okay, so I have my mount. I'm inside of the RV. Once I am to this point, or once I'm ready, I'm going to remove the actual factory installed steps by simply lifting this bracket up, unbolting it, and then removing it. And then once I remove the factory steps, which are these LCI steps, this bracket right here is going to replace this section. And the way it replaces it essentially is I'm going to set it on the floor. I'm going to press it up against here like this, and I'm going to fasten it to this channel right here. And then I'm going to do the same on the opposite side. Once I've fastened this through, I'm going to secure it from the other end with some flat bolts that go through and secure it in place. And then once it's secured in place, I'll simply take the steps that I have, and they will essentially connect to this panel very easily, which is going to give me the ability just to kind of interconnect them and lock them in place. So, seems pretty easy, but we'll see. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to need to do, and something that's going to be pretty easy with these steps, is remove the pins that actually hold this bracket in place, and that's going to give me access to the bottom plate, which that I can then unscrew. Now that is super easy. That was a lot easier than actually removing them and carrying them out, which you would have to do if you were really close to an RV here, because you'd never be able to actually deploy them in the first place. So that's kind of the situation we have going on here. I was able to simply kind of pull them out of place and set them right here for now. And you can see here that there's screws that hold it in place. Once I remove those screws, we should be able to pull it out. And I think I need to take these off as well to remove this piece of trim, because it looks like they put the trim over these screws, or at least over this part of the plate. There we go. Here's the bottom of the step, and here is the aluminum channel that goes above it. Okay, next I am going to put the bracket in place right here. Like that. Now I kind of thought I'd be able to do this step from the outside, but it just wouldn't make sense. So you got to hop inside of your RV to secure this in place. If you have 2 people and one person can remove the step and you can just stay inside and work, then it makes things a little bit easier. But I do need to pre-drill these holes right here, so I am able to put the fasteners in place to go ahead and tighten this down. Alright, so I'm not going to lie, getting these holes drilled and lined up perfectly was a bit more challenging than I thought. I used a step bit. It probably just would have been better to use the right size bit from the beginning, but you are drilling through aluminum, so you have to go kind of slow at it, otherwise you'll start kind of melting the aluminum to the front of your bit, and I did that a little bit. However, I was able to get them all in, and you may need to spread this out just a little bit, because whenever you first look at this bracket, it kind of bows in a little bit on the middle, And again, you just need to kind of pull it into place. Once you have it in place, you should be able to fit all the bolts into place. Now all I need to do is tighten them with the washer, the split ring lock washer, and then the nut on the back side. Okay, so after some fidgeting with it, I was able to get the 3 screws or 3 bolts on this side tightened and the 3 bolts on this side tightened. I used a little nut driver attachment on the back side, and if it started to spin on this side, I used a little Allen key that they provided. So now that that is in place, all I should really have to do is make some minor adjustments once the steps are put in place. So we're going to carry the steps over now, and we're going to see how these need to be adjusted. And you adjust these so a portion of the step actually makes contact with the front of the screen door here, and that's how it kind of stabilizes itself whenever you're in transport. But to be honest with you, if you look at like these steps or even the MORryde version of them, they rock a little bit in here because they sit right on this little threshold area, and that's what holds it in place. So there is some movement back and forth. So we're going to move the steps in, we're going to get them in place and see what adjustments need to be made. So the complication that I've ran into now, and it's a pretty big one, is the fact that these steps probably won't work on my 5th wheel. I need to make a couple adjustments over here. This needs to go into that track. It probably got shifted while it was in transport. That's my problem right there. That fender skirting is preventing this from sitting flush the way it needs to for the steps to deploy. I need to figure out what I'm going to do here, because I don't want to remove the fender skirting, even though it's just this one piece right here, because it wouldn't look right if I take it off. And the material beneath here is likely not that well finished off, I'd imagine. But now I'm going to see what I can do here to try to make this work. Okay, so at first I didn't think it would work, mainly because during shipment, this notch right here kind of came out of this channel and it was wedged on the outside. And I kind of figured something like that might have happened just by looking at the condition of the box. They also put a wooden peg between this area right here, which you have to unscrew, and that's in the event this thing falls during shipment, it bends this in. But everything is fitting well now. You can see it's a lot straighter than it was because this is now inside of that groove. So in order for this step to work, you're going to swing it down and then you're going to walk back, set it on the ground. I don't have the legs adjusted yet, but it's still kind of leaning in, and if I get to the side here, you might be able to tell the steps are kind of tilted back a little bit. So I'm going to raise them up a little bit more by using this little booster step at the bottom. You simply flip this little lever, pull that one out, and now you have 5 steps. So now there is a little bit of a gap there. So on most 5th wheels, you probably won't have this issue, simply because you won't have your door right there above the fender trim, and that fender skirting will likely not get in the way. Now I can see that it's kind of leaning this way a hair, so I'm going to bring this leg down one more notch. Okay, so we are in place. And you can see now it is pressing into that fender skirting just a little bit. Just as solid as I remembered it. There is a little bit more flex with this than there is with the solid step or the step above. It's not solid rails, right? You have this very interesting accordion style design. And what's beneficial of this over some of the competing brands is that they at least double up all the structural components here. But it does not feel flimsy at all. It doesn't feel like it's going to fail on you at all. It is making contact over here. You can see on this side there's about 3/4 of an inch of space there, but on the other side it is pressing into this fender skirting right here. I really like this product. I do, and I'm kind of torn inside on whether I should reinstall this or I should just keep this, simply because the convenience of this is really, really profound, and especially when you consider the fact that you don't need to retract it out like this. I can simply walk it in like that, and I can use it. I could put the bottom step away, and yeah, it still works like a ladder. So I could easily climb into the RV just by using it that way. And of course I could retract the bottom step, and that's kind of the goal, right? Because this is only sticking out maybe 2 feet versus, you know, a flip out step, which is going to swing out and around, which could make contact with whatever's parked next to you, especially if you're at like a truck stop overnight. I like these steps. That's my only area of concern right here. Now, I know some folks will say, can you just notch it out? And that is worth considering, but I can definitely tell there's pressure being applied there. You can see the fender moving when I move the steps in and out. Right about there is the point that it stops moving. It's not that much, but it is certainly some pressure there. Now, you know, I want your feedback. What do you guys think? Again, love the product, but in my specific fifth wheel, my specific application, it may not work the way I want it to work simply because of that right there. I might end up having to remove it. This doesn't necessarily have that because this is where that lip drops down, and you can see there's about 2 inches of space between this piece right here and the actual skirting right there. What do you guys think? I want your feedback. Really don't have any doubt in terms of their functionality, but you know what I can definitely do? I can definitely go through the process of kind of demonstrating how they work, demonstrating how they fold up, and then we'll kind of see, you know, what route we decide to go. So once we fold it up, I'll simply swing this lever in, swing the whole thing up. You'll see this bottom step kind of collapse in like that. And then once that's collapsed in, you simply flip the entire assembly up like this, and it goes into place. And it doesn't take up very much room either. You don't have this huge step that's taking up the majority of your door entrance. You can see how it's rubbing up against the skirting right here, and that's right in this area here, or actually maybe right here, that it's actually rubbing right there. And again, this is not a problem a lot of people probably have to deal with. This is just one because of where they put the entrance in our specific fifth wheel. But I think for the meantime, I'm going to take them out simply because I don't think they're going to work for my application until I figure out what I want to do here. Maybe I can find like a flatter skirting that goes around here that's, you know, more decorative than functional. But again, I'd love to know your feedback. Let me take a couple measurements because I know some folks are going to want to know how wide the steps are, how deep they are, and, you know, compare them against something like this, simply because these will probably fit on your travel trailer or fifth wheel, and you may want to know that stuff. Okay, and before I start this measurement, I want you guys to know that this is not a fair comparison because these are a step that not a lot of fifth wheels have, and you can't buy aftermarket. These are only going to be on certain OEM fifth wheel brands that decide to go with it. So this is actually a wider footprint than you would see on a lot of RVs, so you have to keep that in mind. So this specific top step is 26 inches wide, and the step here is 22 and a half, maybe 22 and 3/4 inches wide. In terms of the depth, the main steps are 8.5. On here, about 8 1/4, so that's pretty close. The top step on this is really where it shines. This top step is 13 inches deep. The top step here is about 8 inches, but if you measure all the way to this back piece, which I know that this space right here isn't necessarily a step, it's about 10.5 inches. Now, the big advantage, regardless of the measurements that we just took, that this step has, again, is the ability for you to get into your RV when you're at a truck stop or in storage. And here's a big one. You see the top step on the MORryde as well as the LCI product actually sits about, you know, I have a tape measure, let me measure it. Sits about 8.5 inches lower than the threshold. Basically, the top step is still a step. You have to step into your RV, so this would be another step. If you look at this step, on the other hand, this is the equivalent of the top step here. And then you have one additional step, which is actually closer to the height of your threshold, only about 4 inches below your threshold. Why is that a big deal? Well, it's a big deal because when it comes to walking up to your RV and opening up your door, the challenge a lot of folks have is that you walk up, you get to the top step, then you have to take a couple steps back to open up your door. But technically on this step, this right here is the equivalent of the top step there. So if you back down to here, it's the equivalent of this step right here. And by doing so, you don't have to go back as far to open up the door. So that's kind of the key behind it. Very, very cool product. They call it the GlowStep because they put these little reflective glow strips on it, so at night you can actually see your path, which is very thoughtful, very nice. Excellent construction. I absolutely love the product. This was just something I didn't think about during installation because I did not imagine that that skirting would interfere. I should have caught that and figured that out before that became an issue. But I do like them. And they are really nice, and they're pretty easy to install. You know, with these right here, I would just recommend putting the plate up, maybe taking one of those silver paint magic markers with you, and just dabbing on the inside and then drilling them out on both sides really nice and clean. It just took me a little bit longer because I had to find one of the holes that wasn't exactly perfectly straight. But again, that's probably just me. Overall though, I do like the way they look. And I was very, very pleased with the GlowStep Revolution that we put on the Coachman Chaparral. And actually the new owner, the guy that bought it from us, who's just a couple spots down, he absolutely loves them and he gets complimented on them all the time. But for us, I don't think we're gonna be able to use them just because of that dang skirting right there. Okay, so we have these back on, and let's take a look at that same spot over here. Yeah, check that out. Big gap right there. The other ones come down a little bit too close and it presses up against it right there. So, you know, I really, really, really was hoping those other steps would work better, simply because they give you that flexibility that is so important. And, you know, I wish that really LCI and Moride would make a system that was a little bit more accommodating to storage, right? Whenever you need to get in and out, because if you have it set up this way, you have to pull your whole RV out in order to get into it, simply because you have to flip your steps out. So if they made maybe a hinge point in the center here where it collapsed in, almost like attic steps, if you know what I mean, I think that would be ideal. Anyways, this was kind of a disappointing day because I was really looking forward to having those new steps on, and I think they'd work out really well had that fender skirting not been in the way. And this is absolutely no fault of Torque Lift. They couldn't have anticipated my fender being in the way right there. I took all the measurements they asked for. I just didn't think about a fender trim, but this is good to know in case you have the exact same type of setup and you're looking at getting those steps. That being said though, I really love the product. Just wish they would have worked for my specific application. Until we come up with a solution, I'm gonna have to stick with these steps, but thankfully I have the room to deploy them right now. Anyways, I will put a link in the description of this video to the Torque Lift GlowStep Revolution steps if that is something you might be interested in adding to your RV, because again, they work out really well, especially if you're in storage. Just not for my specific application, only because of that fender. Anyways, guys, I sure hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.